Hey guys, welcome back to today's tutorial. Today's tutorial we are going to learn about JavaScript for loops. So we're going to see why do we need for loops and what is the use case of the for loop. So someone asked about this tutorial, so let's go ahead and get started. So why do we need for loops in JavaScript? That's the biggest question we need to ask ourselves. Why would we need to loop over things? Why would you need to go through things multiple times? So to do this, we are going to use an array, or maybe let's console log one. Let's start with the first task. So if you're following along, try to do it. So the task will be uh, console.log 1 through 10. So that's the first task. If you can do it, go ahead and do it. So here is one of the solutions. How can we console log 1 to 10? So we can do console.log 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so this one is 2, this one is 3, this one is 4. You can see how tedious this is. This one is 6, this one is 7, this one is 8, this one is 9. Okay, I missed one of the numbers. I have to redo 8, 9, and 10. We got them. So after console logging 1 through 10, we can get 1 through 10. So the next question is, how do we console log 1 to 100? So you might say that's very easy. Let's go ahead and console log again. This is very tedious. So this is the same issue that for loops are going to solve. A for loop in JavaScript, we are focusing on the for loop. We have different ways of looping in JavaScript, but let's focus on this. So this is why we need the for loops, because we need to do something over and over again. We need to do a specific task over and over again. Okay, so how do we do this? All right, so let me show you. Let's see a simpler way of doing these things. I'm just going to write a for loop and then we'll go ahead and see the syntax of the for loop. So start with the for keyword, and then we have different arguments. So I know you are asking, why do we need to use I? And why are you using 11 and we are looping over until 10? Then I plus plus. So you're looping through, we can start at 1. All right, get the same result. But now this is very nice because I can go until 100. And I can loop until 100. These are 100 numbers. I can do that even with 1000. So I hope you can see the issue that for loops are coming to solve. So for loops are coming to solve this tedious work of manually doing things. And we need to do something over and over again. All right? Yes. So let's see the syntax of the for loop. So a for loop is used to loop over numbers, a range of numbers. So take note of a for loop loops over a range of numbers. You need to specify, where am I starting the for loop? Where am I stopping? When do I start? So before we continue, let me tell you about, let me give you a story. So there is a game we used to play when we were kids, and the game was, I think it's hide and seek. So hide and seek game is whereby one person closes their eyes and then the rest go and hide. So let's try to implement. So implement hide and seek using for loops. So how can we implement hide and seek using for loops? So what are the steps that were happening whenever you are trying to play hide and seek? So you have people, and then you have the person who is going to find those people who are going to hide. So for anyone who doesn't know about hide and seek, is that one person, they are given like a duration, like one person is told count until 10 and close your eyes, and then the rest of the people go and hide, and then you can go and look for them as the person who is looking for them. So what are the steps that we were used to be taken? So the first step is that we need to say that we want to play hide and seek. So like announce we want to play hide and seek. That's the first step. You cannot start hide and seek like in a matatu. You need to tell people, let's go and play hide and seek. You need to specify that you want to play hide and seek. All right. So let me make this big. So the next step is to give some constraints. So give constraints. So, and the constraints we are giving here is that this person must close eyes. And then after closing eyes, they need to count until 10. We can give this like a condition. These are conditions or constraints that we are giving this person. And then the rest is that there is a way this person knows that we are done counting and now we can start. So we are done counting. Let's look them. These are the steps that were happening whenever we are working with, we are either playing hide and seek. So how does this relate with for loops? So the first thing we need to know about for loops, let's look at the syntax. So the syntax is still the same. So the syntax takes, you have to specify where do I start. Okay, so you need to specify to JavaScript that I want now to start creating a for loop. So you specify I want to, so you say that I want to initiate a for loop. You need to tell JavaScript that now let's start a for loop. Same way that we announce to people, like a group of people, let's start to play hide and seek. You need to specify that. All right. After that, we need to set we need to get things ready. Like for instance, we told this person to count until 10. So there is a way back in their mind, they are storing some count. The count will start maybe at 0. Then it goes to 1, 2, 3, 4. So there is some counting that they know we are now at 0, we are now at 1, we are now at 2, we are now at 3 in their brain. And then finally we have a condition. The condition checks whether this count is now the timeout. So let's say this person is to count until 10. So this person has to initialize count at 0. We are not saying that they initialize because this is human conscience. We don't have to initialize, you already know. But back in your mind knows that we are currently at count 0. We are counting 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And your mind is checking to see whether your count is gets to the timeout, so that you can now open your eyes and go and search for these people. So in JavaScript, we need to specify this word by word. We need to tell JavaScript that how the count happens. Now in JavaScript, there's no brain. We need to tell it how this happens. We also need to tell JavaScript how to check whether the condition has been met. This person will not open their eyes until the count is 10. They have counted until 10. So there is somewhere in their brain they are storing the value of count until, and there is something that is checking. So this is the same syntax that is happening in JavaScript. So let me show you the syntax of JavaScript. We said that you need to specify to JavaScript. Let's play hide and seek now. To specify to JavaScript that we want to create a for loop, you start with the for keyword. All right. So this is telling JavaScript that now I'm ready to start a for loop. And then you open something called the parentheses and you open something called the curly brackets. This is the action that should follow. For instance, if this is hide and seek, these curly brackets signify that go and look for them. Or yeah. So this is what should happen. Inside these parentheses, we have to pass some details to the for loop, because if this was a for loop, then you don't know what you are doing. Like, what is this for loop doing? Even if I'm looking at this, what is this for loop? What are the parameters? Where are we counting from? Where are we going from? Which is the condition? So that's why the for loop takes in 3 arguments. And all these 3 arguments are optional. But we are going to focus on the way whereby you must use these 3 arguments. All right. So the first argument is called, we can call it initializer. We can call it initializer. Okay, we can call it initializer. The next argument, we call it the condition. We can call it like the condition, right? And the next argument, the final argument, we said there are three. The final argument is used to specify some ways, because now JavaScript doesn't have a brain. JavaScript doesn't know I have counted 1, I have to wait until 10. So how will JavaScript keep track of where we are currently at? So we can call it incrementer or decrementer. So this one is basically used to control the initialized value. For instance, if I initialize a value at 0, I need a way to update that value after I run this block of code. Let me call it argument 3. So I need to initialize something. I need to initialize the count. Where am I starting? I'm starting at count 0. Okay. What is the condition? This is the condition that this person will not open their eyes until we get to 10. Inside our brain's conscious, it's checking to see whether the current value is 10. This person will close their eyes and say 1, 2, 3, but they're not opening their eyes until we get to 10. So there is some checks that are going on. This is where the condition comes to play. The final argument, we said that this final argument is used to update this value, because in JavaScript, we don't have our conscious. When we say 1, 2, 3, 4, we need to tell JavaScript, do we go from 0? Do we go from the initialized value, we go high, or we go low? Because this person might count from 10 to 0. And then now the timeout is 0. So we need to tell JavaScript, now we are not incrementing, we are decrementing. So let's look at an example. I hope that answers some of the questions. So we need to initialize. The initialized value, we can, how do you create a variable? This is a variable that we are creating. How do you create a variable in JavaScript? In the for loop, the most standard way is to use the let keyword. So we need to set some variable. And this variable, we can call it any name. Mostly, developers like to use I. Some use J, some use K. You can use anything. You can even say cow. Let cow is equals to, you can start as 0. This one doesn't matter. We're just initializing some count. We can even call it count. You said the second argument is the condition. This is the condition that checks. So when do we want this condition to stop, or when do we want to continue and break out of this for loop? When do we want to stop? This is what we call the condition. So we want to stop when count. So the condition, which condition should be met for this for loop to continue? Count is less than, let's say 10. And then what do we want to happen? We call it, we want count to be incremented. So we can say count equals count plus 1. That's the syntax, guys. And then we can, inside here, we have access to this count variable inside here. So we can easily console log count. So this is what we get. We started at 0. Let's go through this one by one. And guys, if you see, this syntax is exactly equals to that. So you can use this shorthand syntax, or you can use the longhand syntax. So we have initialized a count variable at 0. We want, so in for loop, this is how it goes. We want to run this block of code when this condition is met. So let's do 5. Let's do 5 because we are going to do it manually. Let's do it manually now. I want to show you. During the first iteration, I'm going to say first. What is our count? This is the first time this for loop is running, so the count is 0. Okay? Then we go to the condition. This is how they are run. So we go to the condition. Is count less than 5? Is 0 less than 5? True. So if this is true, so this is how it is. You can read this. Run this block of code if this condition is met or is true. It's true there. So we can say this one is true. So we can log count. What is count? Count is 0. So we can log 0. What do we do? After running this block of code, our third argument runs. When our third argument runs, so during the second iteration, what is our count? Now count is 1 because we incremented count by 1. Now count is 1. Is 1 less than 5? True. Then we run the console log. If we run the console log, count is now 1. So we get 1. Third iteration. What is count now? As soon as we reach there, we increment count by 1. So this is 1 plus 1. Now count is equals to 2. Is 2 less than 5? True. And then if true is less than 5, then we console log count, which now console logs 2. Let's go to the fourth. What is count equals to? Count is equals to, now this one was run and then this one kicks in. So count was 2. So 2 plus 1, this one is count is now 3. Is 3 less than 5? True. And then we console log 3 because we are just console logging the count. Let's go to the fourth iteration. Now fifth. What is count now? We incremented the previous count, which now becomes 4. Is 4 less than 5? True. We console log count, which is 4. Sixth, we go to the sixth. So the for loop runs until this condition is met. So if you mess up the condition and then it is always true, you get into an infinite loop, which can cause your system to crash or your website. So what is count now? Count is now 5. So something happens now. Is 5 less than 5? That's false. If it's false, JavaScript does not execute the block of code. It goes outside and continues. So if you check this 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, this is what we console logged. All right. So this is what happened. But now we can tweak and do other crazy stuff with this for loop. With this small syntax, we can start at 1 if we wanted to. But now we want it to run wherever I count is less than or equals to 5. So let's do this again. So during the first iteration, count is 1. Is 1 less than or equals to 5? True. Then we console log count. Count is 1. Second, count is now previous count plus 1, which is 2. Is 2 less than or equals to 5? True. Go and console log 2. Third, count is now equals to previous count plus 1, 3. This one is true. Then we console log 3. Fourth, get count is equals to now 4 because it's 3 plus 1. Is 3 less than or equals to 5? True. Return 4. We console log 4. Fifth, count is now equals to 5. True. Is 5 equals or less than 5? That's true. And then we console log 5. Sixth, count is now equals to 6. Is 6 less than or equals to 5? False. So we don't execute the block of code and we jump out. Let's run this. So save. So you look at this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we can do this in reverse. So we can start at 5 and we can say whenever count is greater or equals to 0. So take note of the equal sign. So if I say count is greater than or equals to 0, whenever it gets at 0, it is going to execute. So now we are not going to add 1 because if you add 1, this one will be 6 and this one might run forever. So we need to subtract. So subtracting is similar. You can just do minus minus. Now we start 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. The reason we are going up to 0 is because of this equal sign. Because whenever it gets at 0, 0 is greater or equals to 0. That's true. That's why we get this. So point to take home is that the for loop is used to loop through some range. You loop through a range. I'm looping through 5 and 0. And if we use the equal sign, we can loop until that last number. If you don't include the equal sign, we only loop. Like, let's see. So we only loop until the previous number. This is the syntax of the for loop. So let's see the for loop in action. We are going to use an array. So for loop in action, let me show you a practical example. So let's create an array of students. John, James, Joel. Okay, so we have an array of students. So how can we use our knowledge of for loops to greet these students and return something like, hey John, hey John, hey James, hey Joel, hey Catherine. How can we do this? And remember, our for loop in JavaScript loops over a range. Let me show you the easiest way we can do this. So we start with a for loop. Most of the time you can use I. So let I, we start at 0. And whenever I is less than, so we are good. Remember, there is something called array indexing in JavaScript. So this one is at index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3. So we can use the length because the length is always one element ahead. Because we don't have array index 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't have array with the index 4. So we can say 0, 1, 2, 3. So our length of the array is always one step higher. So we can say 1, 2, 3, 4. So whenever I is less than 4, I plus plus. And then console.log I. So we get the indices of these students. So if we say student of indices 0, so let me say of indices 0. And then we console log here. So using an index of that element, an index, we said they start at 0. So we start at, John is at index 0, James is at index 1, George is in index 2, this one is index 3. But the length of this array is 4. So by doing so, we prevent it going up to 4. We can use the index 0, 1, 2, 3, but now we include an equal sign and we still get the same result, 0, 1, 2, 3. So what do we need to do? Here we are getting the indices of these arrays. So we can console log, we can use array indexing to get that element. So array student of index I. All right. You can see we got Joel, Catherine, all those. Is that understood? So we are looping through a range, but now we are clever enough to loop through the arrays indices. But now if the array, you don't know the array's length ahead of time, this is where we use the method. There's a method called dot length. every JavaScript array has a method called .length. .length, so .length goes ahead and counts the items in your array. So it is going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. But remember, we don't have an element at index 4. That's why we use a less than sign, because the length is always one step ahead. And then if we console log that, you see all these names have been console logged. So to finish our question, we can use add a hey and do that. So you get hey James, hey John, hey Joel, hey Catherine. Right? So this is how we start working with these for loops to achieve greater things. But remember, the for loop will always be used to loop through a range. Currently, we are looping through the range of 0 and 4, but exclusive of 4 because we are using the less than sign. Finally, I wanted to talk about something called scope in for loops. But before we talk about for loops scope, I can see time is too much gone. So let me touch on scopes. A scope is where is my variable accessed. So you can see I'm able to access students inside the for loop. But if I create a variable here called my name is equals to tech, can I get this TechWithTwin here? Okay, we are not able to get it because this is a concept called scoping. And you have to be very careful in JavaScript, because if we use the var way of creating variables, now we didn't get the error. The element is accessible outside. So think of a for loop as an estate. And inside the estate, we have things that the outside world can't access. Those things, whenever you define the variable with a let, it's only accessible in its own estate, in its own for loop. And also, I can also create the same variable here. And there will be no conflicts because the name here is scoped to its own estate than this name. But remember, inside the for loop, we can access global variables. So these are called global variables that are defined in the global scope. The scope, think of the scope as a way of scoping things. Scoping means maybe an estate has maybe a water source that only people in the estate can access. Anyone from the outside cannot access. Whenever you use the let keyword or the const keyword, that's how it behaves. What happens when you use the var keyword? This is a very old way of creating JavaScript. This was the initial way. Now it's accessible even in the outside. So think of an estate with a swimming pool that outsiders can use. So this one is called local scope. Variables defined with the let or const inside a for loop have something called a local scope. This is an estate with a water source that only the estate people can use. Okay. Think of global variables, global scope. Global scope means maybe you are in a country, you can go to any county you want because they are defined inside the global scope of the country. I'm giving you an example, a scenario. But in an estate, if you have some water source that is private, no one can access it. So it's localized, it's local scope, it's only accessible to people inside. And that is only when you use the let keyword or the const keyword. But if you use the var keyword, that means this is a swimming pool that other outsiders can use. So that's it on the for loops in JavaScript. You can do quite a lot with these for loops. But I hope that was a very nice introduction to JavaScript for loops. So thank you for watching. Make sure you like and follow and share with your friends. Thank you.